Hanselminutes.com, it's Hansel Minutes. A weekly discussion with web developer and technologist Scott Hanselman, hosted by Carl Franklin. This is Lawrence Ryan announcing show number 59, recorded Wednesday, April 11th, 2007. Support for Hansel Minutes is provided by Telerik RAD Controls, the most comprehensive suite of components for Windows Forms and ASP.NET web applications. Online at www.telerik.com. Support is also provided by .NET Developers Journal, the world's leading .NET Developer magazine. Online at www.sys-con.com. In this third episode of Hanselminutiae, the focus is data backup strategies.
Hi, this is Carl Franklin. You're listening to Hansel Minutes from Hanselminutes.com. How you doing, Scott?
Oh, it's been quite a week, Carl. This is it's been a little crazy. I've been running around playing IT manager for the Hanselman family.
Yeah, speaking of IT, we did Run As Radio this week, the first episode.
Yeah, Greg Hughes and Richard Campbell.
Yep, and that turned out really well.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I respect those guys a great deal, and Greg is a very good friend of mine. He works here at Curlian, and he's a deep IT guy with a real hardcore security focus. So I think they're going to play off each other well. I think people should check that out.
So if you don't know what we're talking about, it's a new show we're doing every week. Richard Campbell's the host. Greg Hughes, who works with Scott, is the co-host, and it's about IT with a Microsoft-centric view. And that's at runasradio.com. So I've been busy too because I actually edited the show and got the new show online, and added the modules to the code to be able to handle the new show and blah blah blah. So it went fairly smoothly, but it just took a long time.
Yeah.
So,
my parents live down about 2 hours away from where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been trying to do a lot of. Not that I don't want to visit them all as often as I can, but I try to do most of my work remotely. Try to remote in, use copilot.com, VNC, different things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But, sometimes you just can't get the work done that you want to get done.
Yep.
And, I posted on my blog a while back about having a backup strategy for your family, how important that is to have a backup strategy.
Right.
Because basically what happened was I lost my dad's email. I lost 2 years of his email.
Yeah, you were telling me about this. This was in the one that uses Firefox or whatever.
Yeah, Thunderbird.
Right.
Yeah, it's the Firefox kind of suite of the Mozilla suite of things, and I just got confused, I don't really know what happened, but so then I kind of went on this tear to go and back up the whole family.
Okay.
I drew this diagram and kind of presented it to the whole extended family about how exactly we're going to back up all of our stuff up. I'm okay with being the hub of these things, but the problem was that the strategy was very vague before, and it had never been written down and talked about. So I got all those little 2 gigabyte tiny Kingston, little USB keys. They're like the size of a piece of Trident gum.
Yep, they're the size of the USB connector.
Right. So all the family members who have no broadband, all the dial-up family members have those little 2 gigs now. So I went over to 86-year-old Uncle Ronnie's house and hooked him up with a batch file that would copy his My Documents onto that little device and suppress errors /Y, all that kind of stuff, have it run on a weekly schedule. So his email is backed up because he's on a laptop that's definitely running on borrowed time.
If he's like anybody in my family, my mother, grew up parents grew up in the Depression, so, they have that, save everything mentality. And one of the things they like to save is electricity by turning the computer off when it's time to do the automatic updates. So it's very hard for her to get automatic updates because she turns her computer off when she's not using it.
Right.
And, yeah.
He's the same way. I set it up to back up in the middle of the afternoon when I know he's on the machine. And I also made it so he could back it up whenever he felt like it. And he'll probably end up running it himself. But he's also gotten in the habit of printing out his entire contact list. So he puts it to a hard copy as well because he's the keeper of all records of all records Hanselman.
Yeah.
Right, he's got the whole family tree. Everything's managed in hard copy, very organized. So then I go over there, once a month and pick up that device, copy it to my system, take it home, and then put it onto my Microsoft home server.
That's a good idea.
So all the dial-up people do SneakerNet, which is a very effective way of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm set up with Mozy.com, M-O-Z-Y.
Now what's that?
That's the online backup service. It's $50 a year, and they will back up an unlimited amount of data. Right now I've backed up about 100 gigs.
So how does it work? I mean, do they just do a low-speed, constant backup stream?
It's actually, you can set it to, at throttle at any speed that you want, but right now mine's going at about 600K a second. It's been running for the last week and a half. It's just about finished, and then they'll do differential backups from there, so I won't use up so much. The
problem, I think, if you have a lot of data, and if you lose it, and it's all in an online backup thing, it'll take a long time to download it.
Well, with Verizon Fios in the U.S. at least, you've got 15 megabits down. I presume that Mozy might not necessarily send it to me as fast as that, but certainly within a few days I could get the majority of what I want. I don't need to get my VMs and my music immediately. I'm more interested in taxes and personal files. So for us, about 3 gigs is the essential amount. That's the kind of the amount of really important stuff. Mm-hmm. Then there's about 15 to 20 gigs of pictures, family photos. Mm-hmm. And then it gets into video, raw video, virtual machines, and music and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I set the parents up with Mozy. They've got a cable modem. And before I did this, my dad had been having some trouble with his machine, so he brought it over to the house. He comes up to see my son a couple of times a week, so he brings the computer to the house. And it was full of spyware, so I put on IE7, put on Firefox, showed him both of them, set it up with Spybot, spent quite a while cleaning it up and making it nice, and then sent him on his way. And the next day, the system was infested with some kind of Russian virus, Trojan, evil thing. And I said, he felt really bad, and I don't think he shouldn't have to be computer savvy, so he felt bad. But whenever somebody gets some infestation like this on their machine, I try not to make them feel guilty because it just happens, right?
Right.
So I'm trying to figure out, I've got the thing immunized, I've got antivirus software. How in the world did he get this thing on? Well, somebody sent him a picture of like an elephant eating a snake or a snake eating an elephant or something. Video, basically. And I said, how did this happen? He's like, well, I didn't do anything last night. I came home after I left your house, and my buddy sent me a picture of a video of an elephant eating a snake, and I watched the video, and that was it. Well, it turns out that it had some kind of custom video codec that it auto-downloaded, and it said, you can't watch this video unless you download this video codec.
Oh.
And the codec was an evil toolbar, and the evil toolbar brought friends to the party. And the next thing I knew, a balloon popped up, like the little balloons from the tray. Mm-hmm. Balloon pops up and says, your computer's infested with spyware. Click here to download an anti-spyware program.
And that probably is also spyware, right?
So he downloaded a program called Spylocked. Spylocked is actually a anti-spyware program that is evil.
Right.
And the thing is that when he sent me a screenshot, I taught both my parents how to do screenshots. That's kind of their primary way of saying something went wrong.
Yeah.
Hint, print screen, and send it to me. So I get these 2 meg, big images like, what's this? And then a big screenshot of something horrible that's happened. And the part that killed me was that the balloon had said, click this balloon, and spelled balloon wrong.
No.
So
there's your first clue.
Your first clue that something has gone bad is poor grammar, poor spelling. You'd think that the evil people would realize that spell checking would make it more likely for us to do their evil things.
But poor grammar is the thing that's very difficult for somebody who doesn't speak the language to get right, because you might know somebody who kind of speaks both languages, but for the kind of people we're talking about, they're not the most highly educated people in the world that write these things.
Well, I don't know. I can't speak to that because I don't know who they are. I know that they're very likely contract programmers that don't think they're doing, presumably they're not doing evil. I've always wondered about this. Who are the spyware people? Maybe one of the spyware people is listening to our stuff and can call me and let me know who they are. Because I want to know, are you sitting at home thinking, I could do this really evil thing? I could name my DLL an 8-character random name and hide it in System32. Or, I could misspell calc and I could be calc2.exe.
So I got a story for you.
Okay.
Once, when I was working at Voyetra Technologies, these are the guys that made a DOS MIDI sequencer back in the 80s, and Cakewalk ate their lunch, basically. And these guys had copy protection on their stuff, and that's probably a big reason why it didn't last. But so DOS-based sequencers, right? So somebody calls up for tech support, and everything's going really slowly. It's I'm running out of memory, and your sequencer plus I'm losing time, all this kind of stuff. So they spent about an hour on the phone with the technicians, got all the way to the main developer, and he's like, well, honestly, if I'd have to see the computer. And so the person said, well, I'll drive it over. I think they were at Fordham or something like that, and we were in Westchester County, New York. So this person drove up with their computer, which was an old IBM XT, right? This was about that time. And monochrome screen and everything, and it's going slowly. Sure enough, they plug it in, and, they don't know what's wrong with it. And there's, they're looking around. There's nothing crazy going on. It's just running really, really slow.
Is it the turbo button?
No, the turbo button was pressed. I mean, it was like, they'd like do a directory, and, it would spit out characters like bunk, 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 bunk. I mean, it was really, really honking slow. So I just walk up to it, and I said, maybe it's a virus. And everybody goes,
What year is this?
The head developer. This must have been 88, 89.
So this was the time of the Stoner virus and the ANSI art viruses.
Yes.
TSRs. Good times.
So the head developer there goes, you're crazy. And then one of the other guys who worked there, one of the developers said, well, wait a minute, let's look. And he went into the DOS directory, and he did a directory, dir, and he saw that beep.com was in there. Remember beep?
Oh, beep.com, because when you type beep, there was the order of precedence.
Yeah. So beep.com was like 539 bytes, let's say. Mm-hmm. So he typed it, beep, and it went beep. And then he did another directory, and beep.com was all of a sudden, 800-something bytes.
Right.
Aha. Yes, it is a virus. So it turns out that, that was the first time I said, hey, maybe I'm not so stupid after all. But it turns out that this person was connected to a network at school, through modems. There was no networking really, but it
like
was
BBSs and FidoNet.
Yeah. It was a school network and a school BBS, and this person had downloaded something and picked up a virus. So even back then, the TSRs were there in memory and would attach themselves to the end of executable files, and that's how they spread.
The question that I want answered is, do they have whiteboards and meetings like we do? Do they sit in a room and do they say, okay, here's how it's going to go down, right? We've just got this Microsoft IE browser, and there's this thing called a browser helper object, and we could make an evil toolbar, take over the world. I understand these guys who go to college and they might write a proof of concept or want to be noticed by the security community and then get a job, break into the bank to work for the bank, but to work for Gator or one of those companies where you're literally evil. I mean, there's no other word for it, really.
There isn't.
Malevolence. It's just what price your soul.
Right.
So I had to go back down there and check my dad's machine out and spend another hour futzing with it. So what I ended up doing is I took my Mac Mini down there and I gave it to my dad because he'd never seen a Mac in his life. I mean, he'd seen them like they're at the mall, and I know that there's another kind of person out there called a Mac.
Right.
Right? It's like the first time I went to synagogue, I was like 15, and my friend's like, let's go to synagogue. And I'm like, oh, okay. What's this hat? And then you realize that there's this whole universe of other people who go to church on a different day.
Right.
And he's finding it really fascinating. It's like there's a whole world of Mac people. What's this? Oh, well, that's the dock thing. Well, what is it? Why does it do this? Where's the menu? Where's Alt F4? All those kind of fun questions. It's like he's a kid again.
Wow.
So he's running the Mac, but Macs. I love Macs. They're pretty. They're great for browsing and for mail. It just worked, right?
Yeah.
And that's all he wants: browsing and mail. When it started falling down was when I tried to do some drive sharing. right? You have to know the different. You basically have to read the manual. You have to go make special URLs to attach to servers because Samba, S-A-M-B-A is the Linux open source kind of way to talk to SMB, simple message block, basically what we think of as UNC paths.
Right.
So I took his old machine and turned it into a server, and then I have to go and make a URL SMB : server name / share name . It was fine once I got it working, but I don't know how he was expected to get Mac to interoperate with Windows. And I spent about 2 hours trying to get his printer working, and right now he's at the point where he's got his email, he can look at his files, everything's cool, but utterly and completely unable to print. And I have absolutely no idea where to even start. I mean, it recognized the printer, it connected to the network printer, it prints, and it says, hey, it worked, and nothing comes out.
Wow.
So all of it just got me frustrated that just computers are just too freaking hard. But back to the backup thing. What I ended up doing was just creating a cron job to back up all of his files to the server. Kind of made it like a little poor man's network. There's 2 people in the house, so there's 3 computers: mom, dad, and the server. And then we back it up again with Mozy.com. I got them their own account, and they ended up with about 3 gigs of data. So as long as you can get past the idea that the data is going to be encrypted and sent over to them, they encrypt it locally and they send it off. But some people don't like to give up that control. You know?
Right.
But I like it. I think that Mozy.com or services like it are going to work out very nicely. And $50 for unlimited couldn't beat that price. What is your backup strategy anyway? What do you do?
My backup strategy is all secondary disks and external USB drives.
Really?
I love the MyBook 500 gig.
Oh, dude, the MyBook. I've got MyBooks all over the place.
That's what I do. I plug them in.
Great.
And it's all offline. It's not a problem. That's pretty much my sole backup strategy.
You're going to love the home server, the Windows home server. We should do a whole show. I'm going to call those guys. I called them earlier to talk to Charlie Kindle, the PM for Windows home server.
Yeah.
I think we're allowed to talk that there's the beta program now, and I think there were some invitations that went out. But basically, you plug in as many and as oddly shaped and oddly sized external drives as you like, and it just turns them into one big giant drive.
Wow.
So I just took all my external drives. I had a 35 and a 75 and a 250, just a bunch of random ones that I'd forgotten about, plugged them all in, and then it does kind of a software RAID kind of a thing. It's not RAID proper, but they basically build their own custom file system.
Nice.
On top of NTFS. And I ended up with like a 785 gigabyte rated, I wouldn't say RAID, again, RAID isn't the right word for it, but a software duplication strategy such that I can remove one of the drives and not lose the data.
Yeah.
And then you can add as many as you want and remove them whenever you want. You just have to warn it that you're going to remove something, and then it'll make sure that those files are sufficiently duplicated elsewhere. So I've just been basically making arrays of these MyBooks, these Western Digital MyBooks. They're fantastic.
One of the biggest problems we have here, of course, is that we have a lot of data. I mean, we're producing 5 or 6 shows a week, sometimes 7.
Yeah. And
there's just a lot of data backing up here. So we need to have archive as well as duplicate archive, and then take things off our RAID. So what I'm looking into now is a couple of NAS devices, a couple of network-attached storage devices. Do you have any of those?
I looked at the Buffalo Technologies one?
Uh-huh.
They've got a terabyte one that's basically 4 250s, and it's running a little Linux box, and it's got an HTTP server that you can go in and manage it. But I'm thinking that my network-attached storage situation is going to be the home server. I'm absolutely enamored with this thing and convinced that it's going to change stuff. It's fantastic.
Well, this is at home. What about it? What about at work? I guess you don't have to deal with that stuff.
At work, we're at work, right? We're a big company. We've got EMC and a SAN and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so you don't have to worry about it at work.
You could nuke the place, and there's backup storage everywhere.
As a matter of fact, I think Greg was talking about that on Run As Radio, the SAN stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He is the guy that manages all that stuff.
Yeah, big stuff. What about Apple TV? Have you seen this?
Yeah, Omar is kind of my eye into that kind of stuff, Omar Shaheen. And the word on the street is that the quality is garbage.
Really?
And it's not that the Apple TV sucks, because it doesn't.
Just
it's
the
that
content.
The quality of the content sucks. And I know this to be the fact because I remember when I went to Tanzania in December, I loaded up my 80 gig iPod video, which can do both NTSC, the U.S. standard for TV, and PAL, the European and African standard, or except for in France. And then I took that with me to Tanzania, loaded up with movies and TV, because they don't have like on demand. They have satellite TV down there, but they didn't have on demand. So I basically brought my portable TiVo, which was my iPod. And most of the movies that I bought are, 320 by 240, and they're really kind of, MPEG-y. And they were okay on a 19-inch screen, but they were letterboxed, of course. So if I was going to blow that up, imagine 320 by 240 or 640 by 480, plus highly compressed MPEG-4, and stick it on a big 42-inch plasma, I'd be pretty disappointed as well.
It's funny that you should say that, because I just 5 minutes ago was looking at this email that came from the iTunes podcasting team, and it came to PWOP, and it says basically that, please increase your videos that you're publishing on iTunes to 640 by 360. I'll read it right now. I swear to God, it came at 9:05 p.m., which was just like a half an hour ago. It says, greetings from the iTunes podcasting team. Apple TV is here, and podcasts are making a big move into the living room. We want all of them to look as good as possible, so we have 3 video formatting recommendations for you. Also note that we have just posted a revised and expanded technical spec. Wow. Finally, the Apple Worldwide Developers Conference is coming up, blah, blah, blah. So it says recommendations for formatting video podcasts. 1, if you're encoding your video podcast at 320 by 240, please increase the resolution to either 640 by 480 or 640 by 360, depending on the aspect ratio of your source files. Why? Because video podcasts at this resolution look great on Apple TV and still port to video iPods. Lower resolution podcasts might also work on both platforms, but they don't look nearly as good on a widescreen TV.
Well, hang on. They port to, but don't they take up 4 times as much space?
Apparently. I mean,
I don't know. I mean, they're not automatic. They're not doing transcoding in iTunes.
Port meaning,
meaning it'll look fine.
Run them. You can run them.
Run.
As always, make sure to test any encoding changes, blah, blah, blah. So, 2, it's best not to create 2 different podcast feeds for different resolutions. By doing so, you dilute the popularity of your podcast and reduce exposure in our charts. It's better to have 1 feed high in the charts than 2 that are lower.
Interesting. Now, that's very interesting, because PWOP is known for giving the listener choice.
Yes, but when we go to iTunes, we only do MP3.
Ah, interesting.
And it's interesting that we don't have the AAC in iTunes.
Right. Why is that? Because I always wanted to add all the advanced AAC bookmarking and pictures and stuff to the show.
But bookmarking works on iPods now without AAC. The only reason we ever did AAC was because somebody wanted the bookmark feature, and iPods do it with MP3s now.
How do we get our Hansel Minutes logo on the iPod? I've been trying to figure that out.
It should be there. I mean, it's all in the feed. We have the iPod graphic in the feed, the iTunes graphic in the feed. It's a 300 by 300 graphic.
Because right now in iTunes, we don't have a lot of iTunes listeners, but in iTunes right now, when I download it into my iPod, the graphics are in iTunes, but they are not on the actual iPod while it's playing. You don't get the album art.
I don't know as if I've ever seen that with any podcast that I run.
Well, that's because I believe there's an AAC editor that embeds that metadata within the AAC.
Oh, okay.
And you basically get the album art, like Merlin Mann's show has that.
Right.
And then you can set up these little trigger events like you could in Windows Media Player a few years back, where, I know that the Ricky Gervais podcast did this, where they'd hit a certain point in the show, and then he would actually bring up a graphic. So it's almost like a presentation where you could say,
right.
Oh, yeah, take a look at this picture, and then click, the picture shows up.
And you can do that with WMV files as well. The problem that I have with that is I haven't found an automatable solution to it.
No, it's all manual. You're absolutely right.
And, we're all about automation. We're putting out all these shows, and I don't want to have somebody, manually doing that.
Well, and we don't want to waste anybody's time. Whoever we're talking to right now is listening to this on the train or on their commute in double time, and I don't want them looking down at a picture and then crashing and then coming to my house and telling me that Hansel Minutes killed their spouse.
That's right.
That's probably a good place to stop right there.
Yeah, that is a pretty good place to stop. It was fun just talking to you about some stuff that we need to catch up on, and I'm sure everybody listened and liked it as well.
This is show 59, and I think that having it be the third minutia show, I think that's a pretty good ratio of content to minutia. So hopefully people didn't think the show sucked.
Awesome. All right, Scott, thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next week on Hanselminutiae.